Hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here. We are in Acts chapter 19. We're going to finish up looking at verses 21 through 40. Paul's in trouble. There's a riot. Today there's the image of a minister being just polite and acquiescing and, sheepish in the face of adversity and, the ultimate therapist. I hear you say, I feel, just the perfect, nice, sensitive guy. Well, if that's what it is, Paul never got the memo because that old boy has a way of stirring it up. Well, we're told that, I like it in verse 21, that Paul, he's going to take leave. He's going to take leave of Ephesus. And he feels in his spirit resolved to go to Jerusalem. I like that about him, by the way. He is the apostle in the larger Greco-Roman world, but he has a heart for Israel. And that's like many people that support a ministry like this. Love the Lord and the church, but there's just a special place in the spirit, deep inside of the Kushkis in the gut that wants to participate in Jerusalem. Well, we're told in verse 23, there arises something of a dispute about the way. There were different names for early followers of Jesus. I like to say one of the things that's fascinating, two of the things that are fascinating about the New Testament Christians is that A, there was New Testament at the time, and B, they weren't called Christians. A word that's employed for them is the way, we're told in verse 23, and there's something of a dispute. And as you read on here, the issue is that so many people are coming to faith and they're abandoning the trades. We're in Ephesus here, where the lion's share of income is derived. For many, it's derived from making various accoutrements to service pagan worship. There was a big temple there to Artemis. Artemis, by the way, reminds me of the equivalent of the Virgin Mary adoration. That is to say, she is the goddess of the patron goddess and protector of young girls and of women during childbirth, and she is so committed to her task of helping women, she doesn't marry. And that kind of lover of all, married to none, is that is asexual, not given to that sort of thing. The adoration of the Virgin Mary carries with it, to my way of thinking, some of those same energies. In any case, there's a big temple to her there in Ephesus, and various accoutrements are manufactured in the worship of her, and with individuals kind of disavowing pagan religion and speaking against that, then it calls into the question the trade by individuals. It's an urban environment, so they're not just rural folk. Urban environments are places where craftsmen eke out a living in various shops, and calling into question the manufacture of gold and silver trinkets to the adoration of the goddess and so forth, throws trade into the imbalance, and that's the issue here. It morphs into a charge against the temple proper itself, and there are so many people that exact a living out of it. It creates something of a fervor. We're told that that this charge against these believers, we're told as we make our way down verse 26, the charge is that not only here but throughout all Asia, or Asia Minor in today's terms, Paul has persuaded and perverted a considerable crowd, saying that handmade gods are not gods at all. And not only is there a danger that this trade of ours might come into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis might be considered as nothing. Well, oh, God forbid, we can't have that. And people rush. It creates such a fervor because so many people are, cultivating a livelihood out of this pagan worship. We're told in verse 29 that the city was filled with confusion and people rushed into the theater, dragging with them Gaius and Aristarchus. These are individuals with Paul. So there's a scene. I should say parenthetically, as someone who's been to Ephesus, it really is my favorite area to be in the Greco-Roman world. It's a massive ruin. It's fascinating. And even the temple that seats over 20,000. It's still standing there to this day. I've been there. I've walked in and among it and filmed there. I work in television in another venue, and it's all there. And it's fascinating to look at the Bible, and you read it and you kind of go back to places where the story played out. It's great to travel the world. Well, it's fascinating to me here that this is a mob scene that's just, there's this cascading, fermenting discontent. And I want you to see with me in verse 31, some of the chiefs of Asia, being Paul's friends, sent to him and begged him not to surrender himself in the theater. Paul was minded to go there, and word got out. And there were some people that are with the higher echelons. They said, listen, Paul, don't go. It's not good for you. I think that's fascinating in part because Paul enjoyed friendships with people at different levels of society. And they're individuals, by the way, that were of the higher echelons that are sympathizers and become believers. We're told this elsewhere in Acts. Paul had a way of attracting quite a diverse group. In any case, Luke informs us that there's this ruckus that ensues. And sometimes when it comes to a ruckus, you would hope for cooler heads to prevail. And in this case, the town clerk stands up and quiets the crowd, we're told, in verse 35. And he says a line that in verse 38 to me is just so worth off repeating. If Demetrius and the craftsmen with him have a complaint against anyone, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. I love that. The courts are open. To me, it's fascinating. There's a way that things should be done if there's a complaint. And let me just say parenthetically, when I think of just the modern political dialogue where, there's a soundbite on CNN and all of a sudden, the world is awash with chagrin over Donald Trump. People shouldn't be tried in the press. They should be tried in the courts. There is a way. If laws are broken and when laws are broken, there's a way that people are to be held to account for that. But this character assassination and all the fermenting angst that goes along with it, to me, just doesn't comport with my sensibilities. The courts are open. There's a way that things should be done. And that notion, to me, draws attention to the fact that believers, for as much as possible, we're told elsewhere by Paul, are to lead just, equitable, and quiet lives. That is to say, not given to the flare and the flame. A lot of these flares and flames, people flame out, the flares burn out. That we're to go the distance, a kind of steadiness, and to steady the hand in the world that's so rocky politically with emotions, and even with religious fervors about new fads that come and go. Better it is for us to be, it seems to me, more of a moderate disposition. He goes on to say in 39, if you seek anything further, let it be done in a lawful assembly. And to my way of thinking, would that be what prevailed in the modern age where there's so much discontent that's kicked around? Well, it's interesting, and I'll say this, I put the landing gear down, that it is a fact that there is a new vision of what God is up to in the world that is challenging the status quo. God's temple, it's not about sticks and bricks, and God isn't to be manufactured with a craftsman's tool. There's something new in the world. God has sent his son into the world to enter people's hearts as the body is in effect the new temple, and that he is not to be adored with images as per the Jewish command in the Hebrew Bible to make no idols. And anyways, God is up to something new in the world, and there's the new ground that's being broken for the kingdom. And it looks like things get stirred up sometimes when new ground is being broken. That can not only happen on the pages in the book of the ages, but it can happen in our own life as well. Things can get stirred up as God is moving us upward and forward. Well, blessings to you, friends. Let's do this again in a week. Jeffrey Seif signing out. We'll come back together again, pick up in chapter 20. Ciao.